Joining me now, first class father, Jamie Jones. Welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. Let's start like this. How many kids do you have? How old are they?
I got three kids. My oldest is 25, 24, and 21. Three boys.
Wow, very cool. So all of them all through college now, or where are they at in their lives here? What are they doing? What are they up to?
Well, everybody's still in school. So I got two in grad school. So I got one in med school, one in law school, and then my youngest is at USC in business school.
Wow. Wow. Awesome stuff, Jamie. All right, if you could please, for those that don't know, just take a second to hit my listeners with a little bit about your background and what you do.
All right. Well, I am the lead singer of a group called All-4-One. I actually started the group back in 1993. We're actually celebrating 30 years this year. We're still touring and releasing new music and doing a whole lot of stuff still. And I'm also a songwriter and producer. I have a production company called The Heavyweight. So I do a lot of work with Disney and Nickelodeon, and working with kids, but also working with artists that you've heard and things of that nature as well.
Yeah, obviously you guys have had an incredibly successful career with All-4-One. So before I get into that, if you could just take me back there to the beginning of your fatherhood journey there. I think you said your oldest was in 25, somewhere around there. How old were
Yeah.
you when you first became a dad? Where were you at with your career, and how did becoming a dad kind of change your perspective on life?
I was 24, I believe, and had just gotten married, and and at that point we were still touring, and life was still pretty crazy, and having a son just kind of changed everything, because now my wife and I have this little tiny person who every time they look at us, they're completely dependent on us for every need, every single need, and just learning, I mean, we were young. I mean, we were rolling in the movie theater, man, with a 2 month old, see Batman and, all this other stuff that after we kind of had kids, our other kids were like, maybe we probably shouldn't do that, huh? You know, and it was just a trip, just figuring out that balance of, me being on the road so much and my wife being home caring for, our son, and then also too, my wife and I love to be together. So I would take her with me and my son with me to as many shows as, they could come to. So, traveling on an airplane with a very, very small child, and showing up at the venues, and people are like, wow, isn't that baby a little small to be out right now? I'm like, no, he's good. So
Yeah, it's amazing too. It's funny because when I told my wife that I was going to speak to you today, she right away put on "I Swear," singing all the songs. I mean, we were in like eighth grade when that song came out, and it's like such a big part of high school and everything for us. So it's amazing. We're just as far away from 1990 as 1990 was to 1957. So it's like it's amazing how quick all of this has happened, and how like the music we grew up with is now that far in the past. But you guys bring, you have the I Love the 90s tours that go on. What is the response you get when you guys are still doing these tours from the fans?
man, the response is amazing. I mean, the cool part about it is I remember like when my mom was older, right? And she would throw her music on, and we would call it old school, right? And I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't want to hear that old stuff, but actually I liked it actually, and the funny thing is kind of how you're saying that 1957, that's crazy. But we've become the new old school, but the difference though is like I'm 48. I'm going to be 49 this year. Like when my dad was 48, he looked 48. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
He was walking around with Stacey Adams on and a top hat and a three-piece suit. And, he nowadays you see folks, our generation, and I just feel like we all still look and feel so young, And so it's like at these shows, man, everybody is having an adult night. The kids are having, they got babysitters, and everybody's just coming out and just remembering that simpler time, man, when none of us had responsibilities. Our only responsibility was going to school and having a girlfriend. You know what I'm saying? And it was like, those were great times. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think everybody loves their children and loves these times as well. But sometimes it's good, man, to just go down memory lane. And for us, it's always super cool to be a part of that. You know, when people decide that, yo, let's go back, man, to our high school days or our junior high school days, or, you know, Lookout Point or whatever it was you were doing when our music came out, you know? So it's been fun.
And nothing does that more than music does. Obviously, music will just put you in it's almost like a time machine for everybody when they do it. But, you know, and to your point, I mean, I grew up, my father had me when he was 50 years old. He was born in 1930. So he grew up in a completely different generation. He was a stand-in singer for Eddie Fisher in the 50s.
Wow.
So his style of music that I grew up listening to was all that Frank Sinatra and all that style music that I enjoy now. Today, I still enjoy. But it's funny because I'll be in the car with my kids and we have the 90s are always playing, and it's now they get it a little bit more now. They seem to, you know, now they'll put it on 90s songs on their own, which is pretty cool to see them do. What about your kids? Do your kids ever do they put your music on? Do they put on 90s? What kind of music your kids listen to?
You know, it's so funny, right? So when my kids were super young and they wanted to hear their stuff, I would put it on because it was the only way to keep them from crying, right? But then as they got older, I was like, all right, now I'm going to make y'all listen to my music, right? And they like, you know, my wife and my kids like, oh, your music is old. It's old. We don't want to hear your old music. I'm like, well, you don't have a choice. It's my car and I'm driving. You listen to what I play, right? And the funny thing is now, all of them separately, they all have like their 90s playlists. And I'll hear them singing songs and singing all the words. And I'm like, how do you know that? You know what I'm saying? And my youngest, so, you know, he just really started driving. And so he and I, every morning we get up and we drive to work, and I drive with him. We get on the freeway. So he knows I don't want to hear all his hip hop stuff. Unless it's old school hip hop, like I don't really want to hear it. But he'll put on his playlist that he knows I like. And it'll have some of our songs and Whitney Houston and Boyz II Men and, you know, and Run DMC and like all the stuff like that I love, Biggie, and, you know, and then I'll hear him singing all the words. So I'm like, okay, so you're not only listening to this when you and I are together, like you're listening to this. He knows all of it. So they love coming to the shows and they have a good time and they're friends with all the artists. So they love 90s music.
Yeah, it's cool. You know, you mentioned their Boyz II Men. Like I've had Sean Stockman on the show here, and I've had a bunch of the other guys too, like Jeff Timmons from 98 Degrees, and a lot of the Backstreet Boys and Instinct guys. I enjoy doing the conversations because it's what I was around listening to, you know, growing up. So it's so cool for me. But let me bring it back into you as a dad for a second, if I could, Jamie. What would you consider to be the top values that you had hoped to instill in all of your kids as they were growing up?
That anything worth having takes hard work. Nothing comes easy or free. As my dad used to say to me, and I'm sure your dad said to you, if it were easy, everyone would do it, right? And to me, the biggest thing I think I tried to instill in my children is find your passion and chase it like there's no tomorrow. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of people who I know my age who are stuck at jobs doing things that they absolutely hate. And of course, you know, there's that saying that says, when you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life, right? Like for me, I love what I do. I love, you know, whether I'm in the studio or I'm on the stage, like I love it. And I just want to make sure that my kids find whatever it is that they love, because the truth of it is when it's something you're super passionate about, when it gets hard, you'll stick with it. You'll find a way to get through it. But when it's, you know, something that you just hate and it comes easy to you, you know, you'll feel like you're at a dead end place. Like you'll feel like your life isn't going anywhere. And I don't, you know, I want my kids to be better than me. I want them to do greater things than I've ever done. But the only way you can do that is if you find what it is you're passionate about and you really chase it and be the best.
Yeah, very well said, Jamie. And to be honest, doing what you do now, the music industry, becoming a musical artist has changed completely. Just the way we consume music. I don't know the last time I bought a CD, and it's hard to believe to even say that. It was like such a big thing, you know, and now nobody does that. We consume it all through streaming, all through Spotify, and this is the way we all consume music. And the way artists can get discovered today is far different, I would imagine, as well. A lot of guys, they could showcase themselves on social media, YouTube. So in your opinion, what is the best way for a young aspiring artist to try to break through?
I tell every artist, I'm like, listen, you is basically what you just said. These kids now have tools we never had. You know, back in the day for me, the way I got discovered literally was every weekend I was singing somewhere, whether it was, I sang at funerals, weddings, bar mitzvahs, didn't even know what they were, talent shows, like anywhere I could sing to try to get discovered so that someone could see me. But now these kids, they have tools. They have a full music studio in their computers. You know, they've got basically their own TV show, you know, with YouTube and all the social media things. And now a lot of the record companies, the way they're finding these artists is through like TikTok and through Instagram and all of those things. So my thing is, whatever you have at your disposal, whatever it is you have that can help you get to where you're trying to go, then use it. So you got these social media platforms. Don't just use it for silly stuff. You know, make sure that if you're a singer and people are going through your Instagram or whatever it is, that they know you're a singer, because half of those tiles, if not most of them, are you using your gift and showing what you can do. And then the other thing I also say too is, and I've seen this quite a bit, I've seen a lot of kids who have gotten signed from YouTube and Instagram, but have never sung in front of people. They've only sung in front of the cameras on their phones, right? And then you get them in front of people and they're like, you know, it's a deer in headlights. So I also say, listen, and outside of using all the tools you have at your disposal, you know, you really, if you want to do this, and you really need to work on your craft. So you do need to try to find opportunities, whether it's coffee shops, whether it's small restaurants, whether it's singing in church, talent shows, whatever it is, you do need to try to find opportunities to get out in front of an audience and learn how to work an audience, you know, learn what to do if the song you're singing is something that nobody knows and they seem disinterested, or they seem like they're on their phone. Well, how can you get their attention back? I know how to do it. It's through your performance, but I've been doing it now for 30 years, you know? So I tell all these kids, you need to get out there. You need to learn how to do that and work on everything at the same time.
Yeah, and I would argue too, it's not just singing in front of other people. It's just sometimes it's just conversations with this younger generation. Sometimes if you talk to somebody that's in the store and you ask them a question, they kind of get a little freaked out that you're talking to them. It's like, yes. You know, you just, hey, where's the men's aisle? You know, they get all freaked out, like, you know. And so I would imagine, yeah, singing in front of, but I agree that I don't think there's ever been a better, there's more opportunity because of what these devices have offered. It's just unfortunate that on the same side of this, it can absolutely kill your ambition. I mean, there's people that spend hours a day on TikTok just flipping through and just being on autopilot, it seems like. Yeah. But if you can kind of control that and use it for good, boy, the opportunities are really unlimited.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you said it, dude. I mean, so many of these kids are antisocial, even though they spend so much time on social media. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, crazy.
And a lot of them will do exactly what you're saying. Spend more time just flipping through, looking at what everybody else is doing, rather than being an innovator and making sure people are flipping through to see what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And then how about as far as discipline goes? I know they're older now, they're all in college, they're doing their thing, but growing up, what type of disciplinarian were you as a father with the 3 boys? And is that different than the discipline style you grew up with?
So it is different than the discipline style I grew up with, but I was definitely a drill sergeant. Like, I didn't play, because, you know, my thing to my wife is we have to have a healthy balance of love and discipline. And to me, I learned that it takes as much love to discipline as it does to love, because it was very important for me, especially knowing that I'm on the road as much as I am, and as much as I was when they were younger. It was very important to me that when I'm gone, that they will respect their mom or their grandparents or whoever is watching them and in charge, as well as the fact that, you know, I grew up in a household where my brothers and sisters and uncles were in and out of jail and always getting in trouble, right? And even though we all used to get spankings, I ended up going a different route than they went. But I also realized that I had a healthy fear of my father. I had a healthy fear of, if I bring an F home, I'm going to have to get locked in the room with this guy. And he was a military guy. He was very by the book, but very stringent. But I also know that it helped shape and mold me and who I am today. And it also helped me realize that the discipline I have in this house for my children is, even though it might seem harsh to some, it'll never be as harsh as the world's discipline on them once they get out of this house. And to me, it seems like a lot of children today don't have a clue of right and wrong, or of just knowing that, you know, if you do something positive, then you'll get positive things back. But if you do something negative, then only negative things are going to come back at you. So a lot of my friends and folks like that thought I was hard. I did used to spank my children, but nothing horrible. But just like I did growing up. Now, my dad had a razor strap. You know, my mom had whatever was close to her, or would hand me a knife and tell me to go get a switch off the tree in the backyard, right? I never did like that with my children. But at the end of the day, it was very important for my children to understand that there are consequences to all of their actions. So if they decide to go to school and act a fool, then they're going to have to come home and see me at some point. And they had to understand, in the midst of making whatever decision that they were about to make, they had to understand that if I do this, then this may happen. And if I make this decision, then this will happen. And I made sure, and my wife made sure, you know, that we had that healthy balance between the two of us of making sure our children felt they were loved, but like I said, also making sure they knew that there would be consequences for each of their actions if their actions were not positive, but there would also be praise for the good decisions that they made.
And Jamie, I would say that like 90% of the people that I bring on here will testify that, you know, my discipline style is much different than when I grew up. I grew up with the belt, or I grew up with the switch or the paddle or the spanking. And I don't do that to my kids. A lot of them will say that. And I think sometimes maybe people will be afraid to say it because of the negative stigma that we have attached to spanking children. So they don't even want to put it out there, because I'm the same way like you. But I think this generation that has gotten so soft on discipline, or being afraid to discipline kids, has really damaged our society. And then you combine that with the fact that so many kids are growing up without a father or a father figure in their life, with zero father discipline. I think that is the biggest cause of why we're seeing so much chaos in our streets, in our country.
Yep, I couldn't agree with you more. I see all these kids, and a lot of them have no clue of the fact that if I go out and do this, then this may happen back to me, because it never happened to them when they were growing up. There were never any consequences when they were bad, or when they you know, kind of were running their parents instead of the opposite, you know. And for me, it was always important. And listen, I understand that people have a stigma about it and whatnot, but look at how our generation turned out. You know what I'm saying? And when I look at my kids now, you know, my kids I'm very proud of them. And not just because they're in, you know, law school and med school and business school. I'm just proud because they're great people. They're very respectful people. They're hard workers, and they understand, you know, that they understand now why their mom and I did things the way we did. And they're grateful for it, because they see some of their same friends who they grew up with, who, you know, their lives are completely different than theirs, you know, and a lot of them have to grow up a lot faster. And a lot of them, you know, are not chasing their passions. They're just trying to get by.
Yeah. Very well said. Well, the summer is upon us here. You guys are 30 years into All-4-One. So what is the summer plans? What's the tour schedule? What do you got going on? What's next for you here?
Man, I mean, the tour schedule is pretty crazy. I actually leave tonight to go to Kettering, Ohio, and then next week we're in Napa. And I mean, every weekend basically is like we're out somewhere doing something. And also got some international gigs coming up, as well as last year I did a tour called A Boy Band Christmas. It was me and, you know, 3 of the guys from 98 Degrees, and my buddy from O-Town, Eric, and my buddy Ryan Cabrera. So I don't know if we're going to do that again this year. We'll see. But I stay pretty busy, thank God. And All-4-One is very busy this year. It is our 30th. So we're planning on releasing some music probably closer to the end of summer. So, you know, we'll be in a city near you.
Where do we go to find out the schedule and what you're up to?
So a couple places. You can go to all4one.com, dash the number 4-one.com. That's our website. All of our socials and our touring schedule is there, but all of our social media handles are very easy. It's just All-4-One Music, ALL, the number 4-ONE Music. And that's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, everywhere.
Yeah, awesome. I'm going to drop the links in the description of the episode so everybody can get over there and check it out. Last thing I want to hit you here, I love to ask all the dads that I get on the podcast, what type of advice do you have for that new dad or for that about to be father who's out there listening?
You know, I always say that to all my friends who tell me they're just having children, I say, listen, it'll be the best decision you've ever made. You'll never realize you actually have as much love in your heart as you do when you finally see and hold your child for the first time. And don't get me wrong, you love your girl, you love your wife, you love your mate. But at the end of the day, when you see this child who, like I said, is 100% dependent on you for every single need that they have, your heart just grows 10 times. And no one's really prepared for that. And I always tell all my friends, you'll never be ready. You know, you'll never have a house big enough. You'll never have enough money in the bank. Like all the things you think you need to have before that child comes, you'll never have, and you'll never, but it won't matter, because when that child gets here, you'll have everything you need, including a whole lot more love.
Yeah, really well said. I love the message. It's been an honor for me. I got to say, Jamie Jones, you're a first-class father all the way. And thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time here on First Class Fatherhood.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you for having me.